If you've been sitting at your desk late at night, staring at a screen that hasn't pinged with a recruiter notification in weeks, I want you to stop for a second. Just stop. I know exactly where you are. You've done everything they told you to do. You've used the best prompts. You've optimized every single bullet point on your resume until it's mathematically perfect. You've hit apply 100 times, maybe more. And yet, the market is treating your expertise like background noise. It's frustrating, it's exhausting, and honestly, it's a bit scary. Let's look at the reality of what's happening out there. In 2022, a solid tech job search took maybe 12 weeks. Today, we're looking at 20 weeks, 5 months of silence. And here's the part that hurts. When a recruiter finally does see your perfectly crafted, AI-optimized resume, they're spending an average of 2.5 seconds on it. 2.5 seconds. That's not a review. That's a reflex. They're seeing a pattern, not a person. 90% of recruiters are reporting a massive surge in what they call low-effort spam. Even if you put hours into your prompts to them, it looks just like the 1,000 other resumes that hit their inbox this morning. You're being filtered out by the very tools that were supposed to give you an edge. So we have to ask the hard question. If AI is supposed to make us more competitive, why is it actually making us more invisible? Let that sit for a second. Because the game has changed, and the old playbook isn't just outdated, it's actually working against you. Here's the thing I've noticed after 15 years in this industry. Whenever a new tool makes things too easy, the market starts to devalue the output. Right now, we're seeing what I call the Faraday shift. Companies are starting to create AI-free zones because they've lost the ability to tell who actually knows their stuff and who's just really good at copy-pasting from a chatbot. Think about it from their side. They're terrified because they're worried they'll hire someone for a $400,000 role who is just a consumer of intelligence, not a creator of it. They've seen candidates pass every traditional benchmark, only to realize later that the candidate couldn't solve a problem if the internet went down. That's why 62% of recruiters are now immediately rejecting resumes they flag as 100% AI generated. Even more telling, half of the global organizations I track are planning to mandate AI-free, in-person technical assessments by next year. They want to see your brain, not your browser history. They're looking for auditability. They want to know that if things go wrong at 3 a.m., you're the one who can find the flaw in the logic, not the person who needs to ask a machine what to do next. The trust has collapsed. And when trust collapses, the people who rely on the crutch are the first ones to fall. But here's where it gets really interesting. While most people are struggling to get a callback, there's a small group, the top 1%, who are securing those high-stakes roles with ease. And they aren't doing it by working harder, they're doing it by changing the very thing they sell. I want to talk about the super workers. These are the people the company calls when the AI fails. They aren't fighting the technology, they're orchestrating it. Think about a fractional CTO or an enterprise AI strategist. They aren't selling execution anymore. Execution is cheap. They're selling liability and human oversight. Let's look at some numbers that usually stay behind closed doors. There is a 56% wage premium right now for roles that require high-level AI governance. I'm talking about base salaries in the $200,000 to $260,000 range for strategists, and hourly rates over $600 for those who can provide AI liability. Take the legal field as an example. I've seen senior associates pivot from billing hours for writing documents to billing for governing 50 or 60 AI legal agents. They've realized that their value isn't in the words on the page, it's in the signature at the bottom. They are the ones who take the heat if the logic is flawed. That is something a machine can never do. And then there's the cloning aspect. Have you heard of digital twins of employees? Companies like Uber are already building digital twins of their leadership to scale their decision-making. If you're just doing the work, you're providing the data for your own replacement. But if you're the one designing the workflow, the agentic architect, you're the one who owns the machine. You aren't providing the labor, you're providing the judgment. This is the part most people have completely backwards. They think they need to be the best user of the tool. In reality, you need to be the one the company trusts to tell the tool what to do and to know when it's lying to you. This leads us to a concept I call intelligence decoupling. It sounds technical, but it's actually very human. It's the ability to perform complex synthesis offline. In the world of 2026, your value isn't how fast you can generate an answer. Speed is a commodity. Your value is how well you can explain why a specific answer is right, or more importantly, why a prompt's logic is flawed, using first principles thinking. When I first looked at the latest HR data, this part really hit home. 73% of hiring leaders now prioritize judgment and critical thinking over specific AI skills. There's a 23% salary premium just for being able to demonstrate that you can think from first principles. Why? Because 43% of Fortune 500 companies are now implementing human-only verification stages in their hiring. Now, this is the part that changes everything. They want to see you work through a problem on a whiteboard with no screen, no internet, and no shortcuts. They want to see the offline version of your expertise. In the near future, the most valuable person in the room won't be the one who can generate the answer the fastest. It will be the one who can prove the answer is right without hitting enter. It's about being a validator, not a consumer. A consumer takes what the machine gives them and hopes for the best. A validator understands the underlying mechanics so deeply that they can spot a hallucination before it causes a $1 million mistake. So the question you have to ask yourself is, how do you prove you're a validator before you even step into that room? So let's talk about what you can do this week. I don't want to give you vague motivation. I want to give you a blueprint to bridge what I call the authenticity void. Step 1, rebuild your human voice. Stop using the templates everyone else is using. If a recruiter spends 8 seconds on a human-centric resume, but only 2 seconds on an AI-templated one, you know what you have to do. Write like a person and mention the things a machine wouldn't know, the messy, complicated human side of your projects. Step 2, create a failure portfolio. This is one of the most powerful tools I've ever seen. Most people only show their wins. I want you to show a project where the logic failed and walk through exactly how you identified the flaw and fixed it. This proves your auditability. It shows you aren't just a passenger, you're the mechanic. Step 3, practice analog synthesis. Prepare for your next interview without a screen. If you can't explain your core value and your logic using only a pen and a piece of paper, you aren't ready for the Faraday test. I've seen this play out 100 times. This isn't easy. It requires you to step away from the shortcuts that everyone else is taking, but the people who figure this out, they're the ones getting the callbacks. They're the ones securing the $400 contracts while everyone else is fighting over the noise. Josh Bersin said it best recently, competitive advantage is no longer the technology itself, but the human-led innovation around it. You don't need more AI tools. You need to demonstrate the one thing AI can't replicate: individual accountability. The Faraday test isn't a threat. It's your biggest opportunity to finally stand out. Look, I know this is a lot to take in, but you've got this. Take a breath, rebuild that resume, and I'll see you in the next one.